Hello everyone, Jules here for WhatCulture.com, and I don't know about you, but have you ever thought to yourself, if you were a video game villain, that it simply wouldn't be worth it? I mean, sure, you'd have minions to boss about, get to be a bit of a dick and threaten the world on a daily basis, but I do that in my real life, and I can tell you, it doesn't always end well. No, it breeds resentment, ill will, and worse still, you have to deal with the fact that no matter how impregnable you think your fortress is, how high-tech your gear, that unfortunately some plucky hero is going to assail all of your challenges and slap you on your bold ass head. It doesn't help matters that some of the bosses actively seem to want to be stopped, as they'll even equip their stages with the very means to send them packing. So let's take a look at some of these Burks and learn a lesson or two to help protect our own evil empires. I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 video game bosses beaten by their own arenas. Number 8, Instructor RAZUVIOUS, World of Warcraft. Whilst trawling the military quarter of the Nerubian Ziggurat Naxxramas, I hope I said that right, it seems weird, raid parties will first be halted by Instructor RAZUVIOUS, a man with a ridiculous name blocking, as I've just mentioned, a ridiculously named area. The teacher is majorly miffed at having his tutelage of a whole new generation of Death Knights interrupted by interlopers, so decides to discipline players with a very hard brand of corporal punishment. In fact, it's so hard that only those in massively over-leveled gear can tank the pissed-off professor. Just as well, then, that the lecturer is cheered on by a whole class of his students, each of them self-buffed with the damage-withstanding bone barrier, and each of them susceptible to mind control. Now, the trick is that if you get a priest to possess the protected pupils and let them draw out the bulk of RAZUVIOUS' punishment, then the rest of the party can concentrate on absolutely battering him. In the 10-man version of the raid, the dozy Death Knight makes things even harder for himself by leaving a load of mind control crystals just lying about his classroom, just in case the group didn't have the required classes. So you know what? Grade F- for arena idiocy. Number 7, CROCOMIRE, Super Metroid. Super Metroid's CROCOMIRE has at least 8 eyes, but sadly, for the scaly sub-boss, none of them are in the back of his head. If they were, then Samus Aran's adventure would almost have certainly come to a nasty conclusion in the depths of the Brinstar. No matter how many missiles the heroine launches at the reptilian rascal, they alone are not enough to send it packing to the great bayou in the sky. Stay in one spot, and CROCOMIRE will gradually march upon the galaxy's best bounty hunter, eventually making her suit about 200% more breathable thanks to the massive walls of spikes that she'll get impaled on. Now, you might be thinking that those spikes are actually part of the solution to beat it, right? Well, what you've really got to do is just keep pushing the tubby lump back until it stumbles onto a rickety bridge and falls through thanks to its enlarged gut. If Croc had just checked behind him and maybe hit the gym once or twice instead of the snack bar, it could have all been so different. Ah well. Number 6, JASPER rolls, Psychonauts. Whilst surfing through the cranial confusion of Gloria von Guton in Tim Schafer's literal brain teaser Psychonauts, temple-rubbing protagonist Raz confronts the rotund, revolting Jasper Rolls, a mental manifestation of the actress's inner critic and the reason for her complete psychological collapse. Now, to be fair, Rolls is actually a bit more aware than some of the others on this list, as every time you try to toast his pinkies with these lights, he'll blow one of them out, making it a little bit harder. However, it's also the reason why he is on this list, because he doesn't take the initiative to blow out all the candles at once, thus removing the means of his defeat. I know you look like an absolute plum, mate, but it doesn't mean that you've got to have the brain of one. Still, at least he's got what every other area of Psychonauts drips with, a brilliant dose of comedy and charm, making it fun to silence this critic once and for all. Number 5, CENOBIA, Shadow of the Colossus. One of the things that makes CENOBIA stand out, apart from looking like the angriest avocado on Earth, is that it's one of the few colossi that actually targets Wanda and instead of the old, "Oh, please get off my back, little man," actually tries fighting back. Now, Dorman describes how this beast lusts for destruction, and it's actually this appetite for architectural aggression which ultimately proves to be the Guardian's downfall. With no discernible weak point to stab at on its armoured body, all the player can do is seek refuge on one of the pillars scattered around the ruins. That's when it dawns on you that using this Raji armadillo beast's own anger against it is the key to unveiling his glowing rune of ruination. Taking a lead from William the Conqueror's book, an arrow to Cenobia's eye brings about its demise. Enraged, the brute charges Wanda's platform, dislodging masonry onto its bonds and exposing the fur beneath. Repeating this trick twice is enough to expose the susceptible sigil, and from then on it's business as usual, and by that I mean stabbing it to death. Fun times. Number 4. Ninetales, Okami. The Dark Kitsune Ninetales is perhaps the most memorable masterpiece amongst Okami's Technicolor spectacle, a multi-stage epic which literally tests who's quickest on the draw. However, it seems that old Ninetales over here should have been a bit more careful with his choice of home, because the island setting is actually a key part in its downfall. Throughout the fight, Ninetales will periodically raise its branch sword Nine Strike in preparation for a devastating attack. It's at this point that our god in wolf's clothing must divert the storm rippling around the arena in the direction of her adversary's conductive blade, which, acting as a lightning rod, splits Ninetales into 9 scurrying spirits. And like a fool, Ninetales doesn't even seem to learn from repeated mistakes, making it seem like Homer Simpson trying to do the wiring by the end of it. It's less 9 tails and more 9 fails, is what I'm trying to get at. Number 3. Every Vampire, Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. As cool as vampires are, and as great a game as Soul Reaver is, its bosses are quite rubbish. In fact, they're less blood-sucking behemoth and more in the realms of your mum, as that they just suck ass full stop, and much like her, it doesn't take much to rub these guys out for good. That's my one per list. Despite the toothy beggars being intimately aware of their traditional weaknesses, fire, water, sunlight, stakes through the heart, and for some reason garlic, each of them takes you on in arenas seemingly custom built to kill them in. One is impaled on the many portcullises he rather stupidly installed where a door would have done just fine. Another is felled with a flamethrower found on a previous corpse, a body that should have been tidied up rather than left as a boastful display. Then there's one that fights you in what literally might as well be a conservatory for all the lights it gets. And finally, there's the seemingly immortal Doomer. Immortal, that is, except to the roaring flames of the blast furnace that he calls home. I swear, if this had carried on, you'd be fighting another boss inside a church with super soakers filled with holy water. Number 2, the entire game, Sonic Spinball. Okay, this is an easy one. Dr. Eggman, or Robotnik, or whatever you're going by now, you red puck of stupid, stop building your machines to be undone by exactly the amount of pressure that Sonic's spikes give off. Also, while we're here, you should never build your castle to resemble a pinball machine ever again, as it is your downfall. Actually, scratch that, please do. I would actually like another Sonic Spinball game. Please, please, please. Please, please. You see, the pinball platformers levels are supposed to be part of the ramparts surrounding Eggman's citadel. Think about this. The mad bastards commissioned an entire security system which could only be exploited by somebody, or some hog, rolling into a ball and bouncing around like a pinball. So thank you, Robotnik, for building your biggest defense and your biggest weakness all at once. This would be like making the Death Star solely out of thermal exhaust ports. Oh lord, better not say that or we'll build another Death Egg. And number 1, Bowser, Super Mario Bros. And so we come to Bowser. This is the big bad that's been the cornerstone of being a cock for so many of us throughout our childhoods. He's massive, imposing, and commands a whole horde of nasty underlings, so why is he such a dunce when it comes to self-preservation? In the first games, he kind of had the right idea. Long castles with death traps around every corner, but then he ballsed it up right at the very end by having an axe behind him that makes the floor drop out from under you. First off, why is it even an axe in the first place? I get that it's not as immediately obvious as a lever, but you're effectively giving any assailants a weapon to carve you up if they get their hands on it. Second though, maybe don't have the showdown itself over the lava in the first place. Things got even worse when he went 3D as he decided to tackle Mario on floating platforms with spiked explosives all around it. Just take those things away and you'd be golden, as being thrown off the platform doesn't hurt the big lug, so why does he put them there in the first place? It's anyone's guess. I mean, maybe you could say that it's because he's got a hot topic image to keep up and so spikes on everything is just his way of life, but seriously mate, you've got to let it go. Studded belts and wrist straps are out, and you're old enough to know better. And there we go, those were 8 bosses undone by their own arenas. Let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. But before I go, I just want to talk to you about another type of arena, the mental one. Now, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that many of us put ourselves in our own mental prisons, and we should be aware of this and try to escape them. Sometimes it will be very hard, but with the support and love of friends, family, and even, hey, a bold guy on YouTube just saying that you are awesome, hopefully it will make your day a little bit easier to do that. Just try and treat yourself as fair and as best as you possibly can, and remember, I've been Jules, you've been awesome. You can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0 over on Twitter, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!